But speaking of popular sports in this country, we head over to basketball with our Storm here,
Yeah.
which, as we predicted, was very busy. So,
Crazy week. So on January 31st, Jewel Lloyd met with the New York Liberty, which was a little concerning given that Stewie had just met with Liberty. I don't know if maybe those thoughts crossed your head as well. But then Stewie, of course, agrees to a 1 year Supermax deal on that same day. On February 1st, Jewel Lloyd re signed with the Storm on a 2 year Supermax deal. And Mercedes Russell also re signed with the Storm on a 3 year deal. On the 2nd, Breon January decided to come home and play with the Storm for her final season, her 14th season. And then the Storm traded for Gabby Williams. And that was the news that kind of made you a little sad there.
yeah, as we look at the Gabby Williams trade here, Seattle really receives Gabby Williams, a forward who had been with the Sparks, but I don't know if she actually played any minutes with LA. I think her rights were overseas. And the Storm send over Katie Lou Samuelson and a first-round pick. Now, if we're looking at it unbiased wise, you look at it, you trade a younger forward that you acquired from this big trade over last season that involved the number 1 overall pick in the draft. Now, I know the if you look at it, just think about it right there. Number 1 overall pick in the draft. That's a big deal normally. But from what I had gathered, with looking at it last year, and doing the podcast last year, was that the value of that pick was really low because it was just viewed as a weak draft, which does happen. There are weak drafts. Like in the NFL, I don't know if you saw it, but the quarterback class, scouts are saying there's no starting quarterbacks in this draft. So there are weak drafts. So maybe that's why Seattle was willing to part with that pick so easily, especially, you move Natasha Howard and Sammy Whitcomb. You want to get something valuable back, and you do with the first overall pick, right?
Yeah.
But I took issue with it because, one, I already liked Katie Lou Samuelson on this team. For another, she had started to really, get traction with this team as the season got on. I know she had her best game of her time in Seattle in that game, in the playoff game against Phoenix. So it's like, you're catching on and you're doing well. So, and then you add that with a first-round pick. It's a first-round pick, but also understanding that, it's Sue Bird's final season and that, the urgency to win is high. But that I'll take that quote I just said. The urgency to win is high. We'll talk about that here in a second in regards to other free agents. But from what I can gather, that a lot of Sparks fans were unhappy. They're like, oh, why would you trade her? From what I know, Gabby Williams has been able to knock down shots, but it's inconsistent. I know that the defense is there, but it's inconsistent. I know that Seattle's been looking for a defensive stopper since they lost Alicia Clark to Washington. But I don't know, it just, to lose a player that I thought was catching on at the end of her time here or the end of last season, and you had a first-round pick, it's like that's a good amount of value, right? So that's why that sucked for me.
Yeah, and she stepped up games that Breanna Stewart was obviously out, so that speaks a lot to what she can do, and you'd like to see her reproduce the same amount with Breanna Stewart on the court. So definitely a heartbreaker there. On more happy news, Sue Bird credits her fans in aiding her WNBA return. So the chanting helped, and that actually changed her decision and made her come back. So we're happy to show her how much we support her and glad that it had a good turnout. On February 4th, Stephanie Talbot resigns with the Storm on a 1-year veteran minimum deal. And our current roster, as it stands as of February 5th, is Kennedy Burke, Breon January, Jewel Lloyd. I am going to butcher that, so I will hand that one off to you.
Ezzy Magbagor.
Okay. Epiphany Prince, Mercedes Russell, Breanna Stewart, Stephanie Talbot, Gabby Williams, and Sue Bird.
So, yeah, I mean, all of those contracts except for Sue Bird are actually legitimate. I mean, Sue Bird's, I think, did we talk about that last week? Is that Sue, from what I had, the WNBA had their free agency show on ESPN. It was only half an hour, so it ended really quickly. And it's like, hey, that's it. There's a lot more to go into. So again, petitioning to see, more coverage of these women's sports. That's why we do what we do here,
right?
But Holly Rowe, a great reporter that has done a lot for women's sports and covering women's sports, reported that Sue Bird was going to wait for Seattle to acquire all the talent that they could, and then she was going to basically take whatever salary was left. So I mean, it's obvious that you're going on. It's like, hey, this is my final year. Go ahead, go get other people, and I'll just take whatever money is left. With that being said, I know we talked last week and the past few weeks about it, like a Tina Charles or somebody. Remember I said to remember that quote about, the urgency to win, the signing for Mercedes. I like Mercedes, don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But the signing for Mercedes Russell, the quote that Coach Noel Quinn was said that we're building ourselves for the future here.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I get that. I do. But I really wish that you would have been able to get a Tina Charles, because right now, if we're looking at the remaining free agents, I don't know who puts you over the top. Phoenix has a lot of talent, and I know not all the time the best players, the best teams on paper win it all, because they don't necessarily all the time win it all. If you look at, you could look at a bunch of things. So, Phoenix, it could be like fool's gold, and a first-year coach trying to handle all those personalities could be an issue. But, if we look at the core of Sue, Stewie, and Jewel, that's a great start. But I was really hoping you're going to be able to add a fourth player there that really puts you into the contender, like for sure contenders. Right now, I'm like, I'd like to have that confidence in this team, right? But it's like, I feel like we're a step away right now from being where we need to be in that title picture if you want to send Sue Bird out on top, if that makes sense, right?
It does. I think we just hope that the super team that has formed in Phoenix doesn't work out as well as they think it might. So we'll see. You mentioned the 30 minutes that they got for the free agency, and that's an issue, and that's an ongoing issue in the WNBA is how much coverage they get. And they actually on February 3rd secured $75 million in funding. This came from investors in the NBA, the WNBA, and Nike as well. So this is hopefully going to help them get the step up that they need to so that they can continue to sell merchandise. I don't know how many times on Twitter I saw that people weren't even finding jerseys that they wanted.
That's been a big deal.
Yeah.
It's like, well, take last year's finals MVP and Kalia Copper. Finals MVP, right? You have to go and customize it. Can't get it pre-made. You have to wait for the customization, and that's technically an option, but it's the finals MVP, right? You'd want that to happen. Like, yes, as somebody, the past few years and looking at it being on WNBA Twitter, that has been an issue, right? It's like, oh, Candace Parker, when Candace Parker signed with Chicago, huge name, can't find it.
Yeah.
How is that? I know that the WNBA, you've been around for only 25 years. You look at the NBA, it's been 75 now.
Big difference.
So you look at it, there's a big difference, and it's good to see this positive growth, and that money will be great as long as it's used properly, right?
Right.
Again, we look at so many things, whether it's funding or cap space or, the great players on a roster. It doesn't matter unless it's used correctly, So it's a good start. It's a great start. But it's just like, you want the league itself to be able to use that properly and to be able to make the most out of it, because I know the market's there. The market is there. It's just about capitalizing off that and being able to build off that. If you really want to look at this league, 50 years in the future and see where it's at, right? As long as the planet's here, because climate change and all that. But yes, that's if you're looking at it just baseline, I think it's a great start.
Yeah, I agree. Hopefully that continues, and hopefully everyone sees the importance in showcasing the WNBA a little bit further down the line as well.